Coming up, Energy Ministry calls members of Parliament on the country's National Energy Transition Plan.
No end in sight to GPHA workers' union agitation, grounding the movement of vessels.
Senior Staff Association of Public Universities on strike as more unions demand payment of COLA.
Ghana's inflation hits 20.8%.
And in Sri Lanka, Prime Minister says country's military must restore order as President Rajapaksa flees the country on military jet.
And a very good evening to you. This is News Hour on GBC News and on GTV. My name is Jonathan Thompson.
And I'm Samuela Kwote. We're streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Jonathan and Tim Dako translates the news into sign language.
We start with our first story. An International Monetary Fund staff team led by Carlo Stralovic has concluded its visit in Ghana. The IMF team held initial discussions on a comprehensive reform package to restore macroeconomic stability and anchor debt sustainability. The Bretton Woods Institution's staff team from the 6th to the 13th of July 2022 to assess Ghana's current economic situation and discuss the broad lines of the government's enhanced domestic program that could be supported by the fund's lending arrangement.
The IMF team met with Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, Finance Minister Oforiatta, and the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison. The team also met with the Parliament's Finance Committee, civil society organizations and development partners, including UNICEF and the World Bank, to engage on social spending. At the conclusion of the mission, Mr. Stralovic said Ghana is facing a challenging economic and social situation amid an increasingly difficult global environment. He added that the fiscal and debt situation has severely worsened following the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, investors in triggered credit rating downgrades, capital outflows, loss of external market access, and rising domestic borrowing costs. He concluded that the IMF staff will continue to monitor the economic and social situation closely and engage the authorities in the coming weeks on the formulation of their enhanced domestic program.
Now, consider the principle of the polluter pays. Debt for climate financing and sustained investment resonated at Wednesday's engagement with members of Parliament on the country's energy transition plan. But when the world polluters have already defaulted on the payment of the $100 billion pledge per year for developing countries, how prepared and adequately resourced are less emitters or countries like Ghana to push their policies and programs into reality? Coram Lano reports.
With or without Ghana, the rest of the world is moving towards a greener climate just to keep soaring temperatures cooler and have a clean earth. Signs of floods, food scarcity, heat, changing rainfall patterns and forest loss, among others, are clear indicators that Ghana is being impacted by the effects of climate change. Reports show that the energy sector is the leading source of emission in Ghana, with an increase from 2.5 minimum temperature to 26.4 minimum temperature in the past 3 decades. The plan is to have the right infrastructure, policies and legal regime to help move the country to a desired green Ghana.
The energy transition that we are talking about is affecting us daily, whether it's cooking, whether it's heating or ironing, whether it's refrigeration or air conditioning. So we have solar in the country to put on our houses, and this year, when the PLC comes up with the tariff, it is bringing what we call a net zero tariff. The net zero tariff means that when you buy the solar panels and you put in your house, you don't need to buy the expensive battery. Just the solar panels on your house through your meter. So when you are not using it, it's feeding into the general electricity pool of the country. So at the end of the month, you might get a check in your house in Ghana.
generate monies domestically to finance our climate interventions, open field farming, cost implications of climate technology use, creating an efficient and greener housing sector were some concerns of the legislators.
If Africa is just contributing probably 4% to emissions, then I do not see why we cannot use that principle to negotiate for the Western world. That will compel the Western world to pay as to effort or to contribute to our energy transition program. And one of the issues that have come up is the issue of stranded assets. And we are here talking about investing in oil, high carbon fuels. And it will get to a time that the whole global economy will be structured in such a way that these assets that we have will become stranded.
What I didn't see is how you intend to get this plan implemented. It appears from your model that it will happen on its own. I want to see clear policy or legal reforms that would anchor the transition that we expect.
The Energy Ministry holds that the transition calls on an equitable, just and fair agenda.
And I can tell you that there are different financing options that are being considered to address your concerns. Number one of these is the debt for climate swap. Number two is the African Energy Bank. They need to establish an African Energy Bank. An African Development Bank and Afri-Exim Bank are very far advanced in putting resources together to start this. And then also we have the African Green Deal, which is initiated by ARENA, also to mobilize resources to support the African transition. And then we also have the green taxes under which polluter pay comes. And so,
by today's engagement, the members of parliament are expected to sensitize and keep their constituents abreast of the country's national energy transition plan. For GVC News, Clara Mlano reporting.
Workers at the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority are bent on continuing with their open disagreement with the content of a letter purporting to be an agreement stating that the Meridian Port Services MPS has ceded 20% of container business to GPHA effective August 1, 2022. After a crunch meeting with the Minister for Transport, board members and management of the GPHA, the Director General of the GPHA, Mr. Michael Luguje, announced that following the current development, a letter was received from the Meridian Port Services indicating their resolve to cede the 20% as contained in the concession agreement. But the workers say the said letter does not communicate any agreement and will therefore continue to protest.
Gapoha workers have been openly protesting for the past 2 days. The aggrieved workers are following a petition by the Maritime and Dock Workers Union. In 2020, the government, through the Transport Minister, engaged both MPS and GPHA to ensure MPS adheres to the demands of GPHA. The workers, led by their union, say during the engagements, it was agreed all reefed containerized cargo volumes from MPS are sent to the GPHA reefer terminal. Also, GPHA was to implement its intention of leasing harbour mobile cranes for its containerized vessel operations. According to them, it was also agreed that GPHA be allowed to handle 20% of containerized cargo traffic during the 10-year exclusivity period. The reefer terminal has been since reversed to GPHA, but the 20% cargo business has not been handed over to GPHA, although Cabinet has approved its implementation. According to the workers, failure on the part of MPS to implement the agreed terms has provoked protests, which have continued into a second day. In the past 2 days, vessels have not been allowed entry into the port, and vessels are also not exiting. Apart from the revenue losses to the state, Ghana has been reported in the International Shipping Journal as disrupting international maritime trade. At a meeting today between Port Management and the Transport Minister, the Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority came out of the meeting presenting a letter that has been received from MPS agreeing to cede the 20%. The DG, Mr. Michael Luguje, appealed to the workers to return to work while the modalities are concluded for the 20% to take from 1st August.
We asked you to allow the trade to continue, but you said you were going to consult among yourselves. We left, and you refused to allow ships to move. We've gone beyond the 24-hour mark, and because of all those ships that did not move, today, Ghana's name is in the shipping press for the wrong reasons. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done as to how the distribution will be done. And that is why it cannot be immediately. But the most important thing is that we have this letter here granting the 20%. Now, I heard someone asking, you want to see it. Don't forget, listen very carefully. This is an agreement between us and us. We cannot right now put this letter in public domain for it to be.
But the workers, after seeing the letter, say the content of the letter does not communicate an agreement to cede 20% to GPHA. The workers say they are not convinced and will continue with the demonstrations and a series of actions to compel the government to direct MPS to implement the deal. The local union chairman, Mr. Ahin Young, said their demonstration is still on and will continue till a proper agreement is signed. Millions of cedis come from the port as revenue accruing to the state. And with the current stalemate and disruption, there is the possibility of major disruption in global maritime trade. Many want a consensus to be reached soonest to satisfy all parties.
That's the Boy Scouts and Girl Guides signs and salutes of the three finger emanated from Ghana. From history, the founder of the Boy Scouts movement, Baden Powell, picked the sign when he came on a visit to Ghana. The three-finger salute is a sign of applause among the Asantes. This walk back in history came up at the Jubilee House in Accra when the Commissioner of Scouts in Ghana, Dr. Edward Metal-Nunu, called on President Akufo-Addo, who was also once a scout in his youth.
It is said, once a scout, forever a scout. And this was evident at the Jubilee House when the scout leadership called on their fellow scout member, President Akufo-Addo. Known as a scout sign is also used in certain situations. The hand is still held palm facing out and the thumb holding the little finger, but the hand is held at the shoulder instead. The three-finger salute represents the three aspects of the scout promise: honor God and country, help others and obey the scout law. Reconnection brought not only fond memories of the days of the scouts in Ghana, but brought to the fore the contribution of Ghana to the global movement.
Robert Baden Powell was here, and it was here that he discovered, and it was even here that he came across the sign, which became the Scouts. Yes, because he was in Ashanti and he used to see people doing this thing for the funerals and everything, and he picked up, and that's where he picked up the idea from, and it became so. The Scouts have a very close affinity with Ghana. The founder, and your sign is a Ghanaian sign, that has now gone across the world. So we should in Ghana be very, very enthusiastic about helping to promote the aims and objectives of the Scouts and Girl Guides. I'm grateful for your visit here. Thank you for the chapter of cooperation that you've come here to open. I think it is worth pursuing, and you will hear from us to see how we can work together for the common goals. Because the goals that you have are the goals of government. They are the goals of any serious human organization. So I want to thank you very much for coming on this visit.
The mission of the leadership of Scouts in Ghana to the seat of government was to inform the president about its aim to revive the spirit of patriotism, volunteerism, and discipline among the youth in the country. Commissioner of Scouts Dr. Nunu said the days of sitting on the fence are over, and now is the time to inculcate the values of the movement, such as obedience, kindness, leadership into the youth.
Now we want to start vigorously into the communities, into the schools, to start what we benefited from, that discipline that will make a child respect elders, not the kind of children that rise against authority, indiscipline. Sometimes you look at some of these things and you wonder where we are going. And I believe the time is to act now, because if we can do so, and we have the firm support of government, it will work.
President Akufo-Addo lauded the leadership of Scout and pledged his government support to ensure that these core values of patriotism and volunteerism remain upright values in the fabric of Ghanaian society. Edward Nyako, reporting for GBC News.
News just in. The Maritime and Dock Workers Union say they have picked up credible intelligence that government is planning to use the security agencies to disrupt their protest at Meridian Port Services' refusal to cede 20% of containerized cargo business to Gapoha. In a statement from the union, the workers say they are reminding government that any such security intervention will not be in the interest of the country. It will be an action in support of a foreign company that is fleecing the country at a time that Ghana needs every revenue it can justifiably mobilize. The port workers say they are fully prepared for the intended security intervention and will not back down on their protest today or tomorrow.
The Privileges Committee of Parliament has decided to leave the fate of the Member of Parliament for Dom Kwabenya, Madam Adwa Safo, to the entire House to decide. The decision by the committee follows the MP's failure to appear before the committee to explain her continuous absence from Parliament without permission for more than 15 sitting days. However, in the case of the MP for Asin Central, Mr. Kennedy Japan, and the MP for Ayawaso Central, Mr. Henry Quarty, the committee resolved by a 15-12 majority decision that their excuses were justifiable and so should not lose their seats. Later, the report of the committee meetings, which were held in camera, will be presented to the plenary for consideration and approval or otherwise. In May this year, the Speaker of Parliament, Mr. Obon Bagwin, referred the 3 members of Parliament to the Privileges Committee for absenting themselves for more than 15 sittings of the House.
The Majority Leader in Parliament and Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Mr. Osechi Mensah Bonso, has made a case for a comprehensive amendment of the 1992 Constitution to make it pragmatic rather than dogmatic. Delivering a lecture in Kumasi on the perspective of a legislator on a constitutional review, Mr. Osechi Mensah Bonso recommended that Ghana adopt Westminster form of democracy in which government is headed by a president and a prime minister instead of the current system in which government is headed by a president and his vice. He explained that the cost burden will be with the presidential system is huge. The Director of the Center for Space Science and Engineering Research, USA, Professor Wanye.
The lecture was organized by the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, KNUST, as part of activities commemorating its 70th anniversary. The event was on the theme, Constitutional Review, the Perspective of a Legislator. The choice of speaker for the lecture was based on the person's credentials as one of the longest-serving members of Parliament and having risen through the various leadership structures. Mr. Osei Mensah Bonsu's presentation covered the entire 1992 Republican Constitution. Touching on the executive arm of government, the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs disclosed that a recent research outcome has estimated the cost of campaign at 400 million Ghana cedis. He is in favor of the cabinet executive, which he argues is less expensive compared to presidential executive.
The Constitution provides in Article 76(1) that there shall be a cabinet which shall consist of the president, the vice president, and not less than 10 and not more than 19 ministers of state. Unquote. Given the role of ministers of state, who cabinet ministers are, that is for running the state efficiently and assisting the president in the determination of policy of his government. It is my contention that apart from regional ministers, the number of central government ministers may not have to exceed 19.
On the legislature, the majority leader called for a constitutional provision spelling out clearly the qualifications and functions of an MP, as well as the Speaker of Parliament, as pertains in the local government system. Parliamentary immunity, Mr. Mensah Bonsu said the law, as it is now, leaves too much room for the offending MP, the Speaker or Clerk of Parliament, a situation that contradicts the principle of equality before the law in the Constitution.
In the face of Article 117, which provides, and I'm quoting Article 117, it says, civil or criminal process coming from any court or place out of Parliament shall not be served on or executed in relation to the Speaker or a Member of Parliament or a Clerk to Parliament while on his way to, attending at, or returning from proceedings of Parliament. You see the danger?
Touching on the functions of the Electoral Commission, the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs called for a law that can check the creation of new constituencies with a focus to making representation in Parliament commensurate with population quota to ensure fairness. He said the report of the constitutional review processes initiated by the late President Evans Atta Mills' government should be a guide to an eventual comprehensive amendment of the existing constitution.
The National Democratic Congress, NDC, has announced an online dues payment platform and dates for the party's constituency elections. The General Secretary of the NDC, Mr. Johnson Asiedu-Ketia, made the announcement at a news conference in Accra, encouraging old and new members of the party to pay their dues as it forms part of the eligibility criteria for voting.
We have segmented the country into 3 zones. The first zone comprises of the northern region, northeast region, savannah region, upper east and upper west regions. Zone 2, which comprises of Bono East, Ahafo, Western and Western North regions. The exhibition of the register, then the elections in Zone 2 will be held between 31st July and 4th August. Zone 3 is made up of Central Region, Volta Region, Oti, and Greater Accra regions. The exhibition of the register will be done between 28th of July to 29th. Nominations will be done between and 31st of July. Vetting, 1st August, 2nd August. Appeals, 3rd August. And then the elections itself will be held between 4th August and 9th August. Then we have reserved the two big regions of Ashanti and Eastern regions for strategic purposes.
All senior staff of public universities across the country have been directed by the leadership to lay down their tools. The action is to compel government to pay the 20% cost of living allowance as demanded by other labor unions due to economic hardship. The group is also unhappy that the accrued interest on Tier 2 pension arrears have not been settled, while expressing dissatisfaction about salary disparities at the universities. The group comprises administrative staff at the various universities in the country. Earlier, we spoke to Chairman of UG Chapter of the Senior Staff Association of Universities of Ghana, Mr. Francis Sosu.
They have to do with the economic conditions in the country. We are asking for 30% cost of living allowance. That is called it COLA. That's one issue. The second issue has to do with Tier 2 interest. Since 2010 up to 2015. The point to the Ghana last year, you were able to pay the principal, reducing the interest. That's around point as well on Friday. The third one has to do the generic allowances to all the senior staff, like rent allowance, electricity bill. These allowances are paid to only the principal and the chief, giving other senior staff, like administrative assistant or senior administrative assistant. So we want the government to extend that allowances to those senior staff categories. And take Tier 2 interest, which are not be paid. The only pay as the principal. Even you have paid the January money from 2015. When the person asks you, you only give me the principal. But that means you're just taking the money after your bill. You haven't getting the money. So
you're watching News Hour right here on GBC News and on GTV. We'll be right back.
Brought to you by MTN with me, Esther Edu Ohumeru. Ghana has joined the League of Nations seeking the Bretton Woods institution for a bailout, and now, due to the negotiations, the mid-year budget expected to be presented in Parliament on Wednesday, 13th July, has been pushed to 27th of July. My colleague Sani Abdul Rahman had this conversation earlier with the director of the Institute of Statistical and Social Research, ISA, Professor Peter Corti, on when the expected balance of payment inflows will hit the accounts of the Bank of Ghana and the quantum.
Discussions usually take longer, sometimes from 6 months, it could take about a year, depending on what kind of data is provided and how accurate they are and how convincing they find the data. There are usually some back and forth, things that government wants to do and the things that IMF thinks the government might not be able to do given its resource envelope.
If you look at the debt situation, 78% to GDP, quite problematic for our size of the economy. And also, if you look at the revenue challenges that we have, how do you think these two factors will play in a potentially final program that both parties may agree to?
IMF will certainly look at it and look at what program we want to pursue. So the expenditure lines will have to be trimmed down. They also look at how much we can resource envelope. So that certainly is going to take some time. And depends on, of course, what government is also willing to give. Then with the debt issue, of course, given where we've reached, we really hit the threshold. And any additional borrowing, whatever program we want to pursue, a source of funding will be to borrow. It will be a source of concern for the IMF because those sustainability issues come to play.
Do you think government should review some of its major social policies, for example, to create some sort of fiscal space?
As for the flagship programs, I am not advocating for a total cancellation, but I think some can be reviewed. Let's take, for instance, the free education. Government has done well by trying to educate its population. That is very important. However, given how where we find ourselves in terms of our finance, I don't think financing the free education in its current form is sustainable. I think some options have to be explored. One would be to pay for tuition and ask parents who will certainly want their children to go to the boarding facility to pay for boarding or feeding. I don't think government can continue to fund the free education in a sustained manner, given where we find our revenue envelope.
What do you think the lifespan of this program should be so that we can quickly return to some level of normalcy and have access to the capital market and all the challenges addressed?
Well, this program might take, I did not less than what the previous program took, because we are not in normal times. The devastating effect of the COVID-19 as well as the Russian-Ukraine war will make it difficult for us to exit this program in a much shorter period. So what we ought to do rather to get the maximum out of this program and grow the economy, make it more stable, enhance investor confidence, and ensure that we bounce back in a much better way.
Now, Ghana's inflation went up 2 percentage points from 27.6 to 29.8% in June 2022. Food inflation stood at 30.7%, a marginal increase from 30.1% in May.
Up by 29.8%. From a percentage point perspective, this indicates a 2.2 percentage point higher rate of inflation compared to the rate of inflation that was recorded in May 2022. In May 2022, the rate of inflation stood at 27.6, and in June 2022, rate of inflation is 29.8, indicating a 2.2 percentage point difference. This suggests a slowdown in the rate of inflation that we've recorded in the past 4 months. You will recall that in March 2022, the rate of inflation was 19.4. It rose by about 4 percentage points to 23.6, and also rose exactly by 4 percentage points between April and May 2022. And now we are seeing a 2.2 percentage point difference between the rate that was recorded in May 2022 and June 2022, indicating a slowdown in the rate of increase of inflation.
And still on inflation, the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA, says Ghana's inflation of 29.6% was due to the global inflation crisis that was out of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia and Ukraine war. At a roundtable conference in Accra, analysts called on policymakers to have a long-lasting solution to Ghana's age-long canker of high inflation figures.
Inflation has seen consistent rise this year to reach an 18-year high of 29.6% in June. At an IEA forum in Accra, panelists were in unison that the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war has led to a global inflation crisis of which Ghana is not spared. The Director of Research of the IEA, Dr. John Kwachi, said food, exchange rate disparities and fuel shocks in particular are major drivers of inflation in the country.
Now, fuel also, again, do something about fuel, because we need to position ourselves to be able to respond to these shocks that come. So is it bust? Bust. What happened to TOR? TOR, such an important national asset. What has happened to it? We need to bring it back, to refine our crude, locally. And the exchange rate also. The way to stabilize it on a durable basis is to close the supply demand. So we must do something about the supply side and do something about the demand side.
A scholar and JPJ editor, IEA, Professor Alexander Bilson Darko, said government must ensure there is abundance of food in the country to reduce the inflation burden emanating from food.
Spend more on investment to increase the production capacity, and also if production in the economy is increasing more, then government will be able to raise more money, more revenue, and will not be running deficit. And the food prices too. If we have a lot of productive capacity, very good distribution system for food to reach everybody, prices will not be rising that much. So if the central bank and government are serious in achieving inflation target as we so desire, though the target is a lot high and we can reduce it over time once we do better, then I think it boils down to increasing productive capacity in this country.
The IEA called on the Bank of Ghana and policymakers to work together in reducing exchange rates volatility.
MTN brought you the business news. Thanks for watching.
On News Hour, my name is Mabel Anang. To our first story, government is courting financial institutions to partner in the rollout of the e-vehicle policy in the country. Funding such programs are capital intensive due to the initial capital required for infrastructure development, but government says the investment in introducing the electronic cars is tailored towards promoting a cleaner environment, all geared at keeping global temperatures at 1.5 degrees Celsius. Clara Mlano reports.
The benefits to be derived from the production of the electronic cars is not just to limit the pollution on the natural environment, but also halt the negative health implications on man through respiratory infections. Clearing up the air will be achieved if drastic measures are taken to transition from the current fossil-based transport system to greener, efficient and sustainable modes of transport. It is estimated that the country will require some $9.3 to $15.5 million of investments to implement climate interventions between 2020 and 2030, which will require capital injection and investments from the financial sector.
Europe is looking at now moving from combustible vehicles to electric vehicles. Do we have any policy in place, any plan in place to prevent such imports? About 8 to 10 years, we are looking at all these vehicles actually moving to Africa.
The plan is to phase out fossil fuel cars by 2040, and that will require sustained investment.
As we commit to continue the production of oil and gas, the reality we are confronted with is the increasingly unavailable funds to invest in oil and gas projects.
As a ministry in charge of transport, we remain resolute and committed to promotion of sustainable and environmentally friendly responsive transport system.
The meet with the financial institutions forms part of engagements with all stakeholders on the country's energy transition plan. For GBC News, Clara Mlan reporting.
Now Ghana National Gas Company is 45 and 1000 2018 certified. Their certification makes the company an internationally recognized organization in terms of adherence to occupational health and safety measures at the workplace. At a ceremony to unveil the certificate in Accra, Chief Executive of Ghana Gas, Dr. Ben Asante, said the ISO adds to the success story of the company and will enhance its operations.
The ISO 45001-2018 certification is a new international standard for occupational health and safety management systems published in 2018. It has reflected an increase in workers' participation. The ISO is the highest accreditation and internationally accepted standard for organizations in their efforts to be excellent in what they do. As a net transporter and commercial operator of natural gas for power generation and non-power customers, health and safety of its workers are essential. Chief Executive of Ghana Gas, Dr. Ben Asante, said the certification gives assurance to the workers and stakeholders. He explains the benefits of the ISO certification for Ghana Gas.
The certification will boost the confidence of stakeholders in the operation of the company and also enhance the reputation of Ghana Gas globally. And that's very important. Could attract investment as well.
A Deputy Energy Minister, Mr. William Oreku Edu, commended management of Ghana Gas for achieving such a feat.
We are deeply proud of the board, management and staff of Ghana Gas for working together to attain this enviable milestone.
Mr. Robert Latte is the General Manager, Technical Services at Ghana.
Had carried a number of independent audits which confirmed that Ghana Gas has put in place systems and processes that meet the requirements of the international standard. That's
Health News is up next. My name is Mabel Anang.
So Bingo's premium gift to Africa. Matthew Adraku, a 40-year-old French teacher at the Jasiko Demonstration Primary School in Jasikan in the Oti region, has been diagnosed with a rare but life-threatening immune hematological malignancy. The father of 4 needs to undergo chemotherapy session and have blood transfusions to aid the remission of his condition. However, Mr. Adraku is financially constrained and is pleading with the public to help him raise 60,000 Ghana cedis for the treatment.
Matthew began experiencing symptoms of a low HB 5 years ago. He later found out this was as a result of a swollen spleen, that is, the organ in the body whose function is to act as a filter for the blood. The spleen recognizes and removes old, malformed, or damaged red blood cells. Following repeated episodes of blood transfusion, he was referred to the 37 military from the Volta Regional Hospital. He has since been given chemotherapy and blood transfusions. With each session, he requires a minimum of 5 pints of blood. Mr. Azraku has been spending between 500 and 1,000 Ghana cedis compensating blood donors, and having exhausted his salary and avenues for loans, he is appealing to the public to help him raise at least 60,000 Ghana cedis for treatment.
I've used all my resources to cater for myself for 5 years now. I have wife and children which I take care of. I pay for rent, and I'm taking care of myself alone at the hospital. I want the government, friends, and private entities to help me out situation and go back to the classroom to continue my work.
The hematologist at the 37 Military Hospital, Dr. Emmanuel Sarkodie, says hemophagocytic histiolymphocytosis can also be fatal. It does not have a cure, but can be managed with monoclonal antibodies. This is said to cost about $18,000 per vial. Alternatively, hemophagocytic histiolymphocytosis can be driven into remission with a series of treatments. Dr. Emmanuel Sarkodie says the patient's condition is at its peak and requires chemotherapy sessions and blood transfusions to sustain him. Donors who wish to support can send their contribution to the Jasikan branch of GCB, account number 504-101-004-0999, account name Matthew Azraku, or through MTN mobile money number 0246 808 795, account name Matthew Azraku. No contribution will be regarded as small.
That's it for Health, brought to you by Lufat, Tobinco's premium gift to Africa. We'll be back shortly. Please stay.